Hi there. I'm going to introduce to you the instructional model for Open Syed that every single unit follows. It's called the storyline approach. And you can see that there's a pathway that students take as they go through the unit. And on that path, they will encounter 5 different routines. The first routine is called the anchoring phenomenon routine. And this routine is always found in lesson 1 of every unit. Once you get good at the anchoring phenomenon routine in one unit, you are better at it in another unit. So that's the benefit of these routines being repeated in every unit. Now, the anchoring phenomenon routine has some traits or some elements that will always appear. This slide shows you the 4 elements of the anchoring phenomenon routine. Now, they may appear in this order in lesson 1, or they may be mixed up a little bit, or it might go back and forth, but you will always find these 4 elements in the anchoring phenomenon routine. The first one is to explore the phenomenon. This means that there's a shared experience, that students will all watch a video, they will make direct observations, maybe they'll be provided a data set or more than one of these, and they have this common shared experience that presents the anchoring phenomenon or the anchoring problem. And these students will explore it and usually create a notice and wonder chart. And then we attempt to make sense, which is element number 2. This is when the science and engineering practices begin to take place. Usually we start with either constructing an initial explanation or making an initial model. They generally will make the initial model by themselves, sometimes in groups, and then we come together as a class and make a class consensus model to really identify what we agree on and where we have some disagreement or where we're uncertain about some things. So you can see that we've asked questions when we did the notice and wonder chart. We've asked what we're seeing that we have questions when we make that consensus model. And we usually show that with a question mark on the consensus model when we're creating it as a class to say, we're not sure about this. Element number 3 is identify related phenomenon. This is to help connect to students' lives, to help create relevancy, that this phenomenon or this problem is relevant to you as a student because you have other experiences that are similar. It also broadens the idea of the anchoring phenomenon. So it's not just this one shared experience, but we can see it all around us in the world. Now, element number 4 is where we then elicit those students' questions. So we will look back at our notice and wonder chart. We'll look back at our consensus model or our initial models. We'll look at that list that we've created of the related phenomenon, and we notice that we've got some questions, and we make a list of them. Those questions are then used to make a driving question board. Now, teachers often have a lot of questions about driving question boards. I will provide some tips as we go through each lesson, especially how to make categories around the questions. And those categories actually will connect to each of the lessons or each group of lessons in the unit. So generally, we have teachers kind of categorize some questions, and that will be your first lesson set. And then categorize some other questions over here, and that's your second lesson set. And you can see how the lesson sets will connect to the questions. And then we come up with a list of investigation ideas or things we need to research. And so those are considered our next steps. How should we figure these answers out to our questions? And that's really where the students own the learning and they feel that they're driving the learning, because you will be surprised. Their ideas of investigations often appear in the unit. I'm always surprised by that, but it almost always happens. So once we finish the anchoring phenomenon routine, that is always lesson 1, we move back into the instructional model. So the anchoring phenomenon routine and the driving question board that you see here, that's always found in lesson 1. And you will always see these same steps, different science ideas, different phenomena, but you will see the same elements or steps in the anchoring phenomenon routine and driving question board. Then we go to the navigation routine, and think about this as what you do between lessons or between days. So you look back to look forward. So we often elicit student ideas or questions to say, what have we figured out? Where do we need to go next? And so again, students are driving the learning between days and between lessons. we often will push towards an investigation. And this investigation routine is very similar to what we've done in the past with our traditional science teaching practices, where we could plan and conduct investigations. Now, the investigations might be a traditional lab, but it also might be online simulation or a sample data set that they need to analyze, or even looking at a video and making a timeline. All of those things are considered investigations. And so we collect evidence from those investigations, and then we put the pieces together in the next routine, usually with what's called a building understandings discussion. And we take all our evidence and we talk about it as a class, and we really come to an agreement of what we figured out. But we usually haven't figured everything out. And so that's where we go to the problematizing routine. And we can go back to our questions, we can go back to our consensus model, and we say, oh, but wait, we figured this out, but we still don't understand this. So that problematizing routine is very important to navigate to the next investigation. Now, the investigations might be 1, 2, or 3 lessons of investigations. And then again, we'll put the pieces together, we'll problematize until we have answered all our questions. And that's when the unit is complete. Now, you may not answer every question that a student asks. Very normal. Sometimes we use those extra questions to hand out for an extension assignment or for a substitute teacher day, and they can do some research and present their ideas. But often we say, those are great questions, something you will learn in high school, something you may learn in college. It might be above the grade band. So once we have been able to answer enough questions that we can explain the anchoring phenomenon or the anchoring problem, we can come up with a solution, then the unit is complete. And that's how we take students on a journey through the storyline. Hope that makes sense.